This is part 2 of our sports analytics. In part 1, we talked about the hot hand on an individual basis. Today, I'm joined yet again by Drs. Nathan Woods and Steve Bruners, as well as Sush Jain. If you like the pod, consider liking, subscribing, and sharing our episodes as it helps us fight the dreaded algorithm. So, kind of expanding on the concept of a hot hand is beyond just an individual player doing better. I think is an idea of like a team is on a streak, or that within a game you might have a sudden turnaround where you've got a change in momentum and it becomes harder to stop good outcomes from a particular team, or there's something that's happened that's turned the tide either within a game or outside of it. Do we have any kind of understanding of the nature of momentum within sports? Is this a thing that, economists or academics have tried to study? Steve, I'm looking to you as our resident academic.
Yes. Yes, Brent, I think it's been studied a lot more recently. There's a lot more statistical analysis of sports outcomes, and momentum is something that people look at on more of a team level as opposed to some individual measures of outcomes. I think there are two different ways of looking at it. One is, and there are some studies that look at from game to game, are there winning streaks that you're on, or where you're scoring a lot of points or playing really good defense. That's one thing. And then one that I have thought about more and had more questions about is within a particular game, momentum swings. And I think in general, we're looking at economic data. It's very hard. There's a lot of momentum in economic data. And what's very hard is to predict the change in economic momentum. And there are these jokes out there about this expert is so good he's predicted like 10 out of the last 2 recessions, because you can make a splash where you go like, oh yeah, we're heading into a recession, and then it may or may not happen. But with all that being said, it's very hard to predict when things are going to start going in the opposite direction, because there is so much momentum in the economic data. In the sports data, you feel like when you're watching the game, you sense it. This is turning around. And it could have to do with the strategies that are being played, because you start getting a lead and you play more conservatively, or you're taking more chances when you're behind. So it becomes a very complicated thing to study, the within game momentum. We'll talk about some of these issues later as well, but there was a very interesting paper I really enjoyed in the JPE a number of years back, Journal of Political Economy, that was studying strategic decisions in football when it comes to, should the team kick the ball on 4th down, punt it away, maybe kick a field goal, or should they try to get a first down? And there are some issues in looking at the data in terms of what are the costs and the benefits of that. And one of the costs could be it's a real change in momentum if we don't take the points as the offense and the team stops us. And the question is, how would you factor that into that model? Which, to be fair to David Romer, who wrote the paper, he didn't look at it because it'd be very challenging to do so. So the first thing is, like, how would you even measure like momentum swings? And there's a paper that I looked at recently that focuses on basketball. It's not the NBA, it's the CBA, which is the Chinese Basketball Association. I looked at the study on the Chinese Basketball Association, 372 games across all the different teams.
And that's a lot.
It's a lot. And they found over 2,000 changes in momentum, which averages out to about 5 or 6 per game. So, Sush, I know you're a basketball fan. Nathan, you can jump in too. How would you define a change in momentum within a basketball game? And then I'll tell you what they did.
I can guess. I would say a change in momentum is when one team has the ball and the other doesn't, and then it switches. Is that right?
It happens more than 2,000 times.
Okay, well,
I'm going to say...
Especially since the shot clock era began.
I'm going to say change in momentum for me would have to be a scoring streak by one team and some kind of threshold, I don't know, maybe more than 10 points straight scored by one team, and like a 10-0 run or something like that.
I would take something like that and I would connect it with a timeout. I mean, one of the things about basketball is the team that is on the other side of the hot team, the momentum having team, can call a timeout, and oftentimes they do.
And then the coach gives them some adjustment and says, "Hey, you guys are missing."
Does it really rousing speech?
It could be personnel, or it could be just stopping the play for a minute so that the guy with the hot hand, if you believe in that,
that's right,
maybe cools down a little bit.
I have to say that I have not watched the CBA. I assume they have a 3-point shot. Mm-hmm. I would tend to agree with you, Sush, that, I mean, it is a point swing, but they say it has to happen within a certain amount of time. I think they're a little momentum heavy. 6 points swing within 96 seconds. Why they picked 96 seconds is they said,
that's short.
What's the average number? So yeah, they're quick bursts of, but it could be you make 2 3-point shots in a row, right?
Yeah, I mean, if you got Steph on your team, that's 2 plays, like 30 seconds.
But then there's the other problem, in that it feels like the concept of momentum is kind of diluted if it happens 5 or 6 times in a game,
Well, I mean, I think that is one of the key things. If you're thinking about, are you going to study momentum? You got to first define a momentum event.
Yeah.
Right. And so it would be different for each sport. It might even be different within basketball. If you're looking at college basketball, NBA basketball, minor league basketball in Europe or China, I thought it was, maybe you'd like to see them. It's in the Frontiers of Psychology, a paper, and they're psychologists from several universities, all of them outside the U.S. Maybe you'd like to see, that's not enough of a momentum swing that we should really be studying it. But Steve, it definitely has the time element to it. Yes.
Sorry. So a question I have there is, you defined it as a 6-0 run in 96 seconds, right? Or less.
Yeah.
And I mean, for it to be a swing, there needs to be more in that definition, right? Because obviously if it's the same team doing 6-0 in 96 seconds and then 6-0 in the next 96 seconds, that's not a swing. It has to be the other team.
Yeah.
Right.
So right.
How are they defining that?
Well, wouldn't it be 6 or more? So that would be, if it was 2 6-0s, it'd be 12-0.
6 or
it'd just
more.
be a longer momentum swing.
And so that would be, and they need to condition on the quality of the team. So you need to put all this stuff in here, and you start saying, okay, what are we getting here? And they're looking at that kind of change from one direction to the other. But there could be something that happens in between. So you go from, we went on a 6-0 run, so we have the momentum, and then when it goes the other way, it switches, right?
Okay.
But they don't have to be like right up against each other.
Right.
The other thing is that they factored into their analysis, you've got 2 teams competing in each game. Are they equally? They had like 3 categories of teams: strong, medium, weaker, and needed to build that into it. And in the end, there are really 2 things that they were looking at. I mean, they kind of presume there is momentum, right? Although I think we could go back to our discussion of other measures of outcomes and go, well, just due to random luck, there could be these runs. That doesn't call them really momentum, right?
Right.
And so then they looked at 2 other things. What precipitated these momentum swings? And I'll tell you what some of those possibilities are. And then, did it matter for the outcome of the game or not? And I'll tell you that part first, which is not that it's necessarily all that important for who wins or who loses and the way in which this thing is defined. So their kind of conclusion is, yes, we see evidence of momentum the way we've defined it, changes in momentum, but whether you end up winning or losing could happen based on these other periods of the game where either there's no change in the momentum or you don't have these 6-point swings.
Let me ask you this, Steve. What are the kinds of factors that would precipitate a momentum swing?
Yes, so they have all these measures of performance. Glad you asked that question. They have all these measures of performance. And again, these are what happens at the team. So it's like you make some free throws. You miss a shot. The other team misses a shot. Somebody gets fouled. There's a turnover. And in the end, I'll ask you guys again, what do you think? And I'll give you a hint here. The time element here is important. What is the most important? Because you have multiple things in this, multivariate regression, all contribute to it. And then they say, what share of the momentum changes are due to certain things. What was number one by far, most important?
Let me take a crack at this. I think it's probably going to be, was it the player's birthday and did everyone remember? Is that,
no.
Am I close? Okay.
Was it a turnover?
I would have thought that would be high up, but it wasn't a turnover. That should be, you would think, one of the highest things.
Timeout?
So this is something that is switching momentum. So it's stopping the other team's momentum, or it's something that is starting our momentum?
It is just precipitating a momentum event of a 6-point swing.
So it could go in either direction.
In real life, I will tell you from experience, it's taking a charge. Has to be.
Those are good things that they didn't necessarily look at with the type of foul. But I think going back into this whole timing thing, if you can score and the clock is not moving, because I think if we define it the way that free throws, more important than anything, if you're scoring on free throws, it's more likely to have, because they base this whole thing on the average possession was something like 32 seconds. So clearly they don't have a 24-second shot clock, but it's 32 seconds. So it was like 3 possessions. Could you get a 6-point swing? That's how they defined momentum. And I'm not saying this is the be all end all best thing, but I'm just saying you bring up some of these issues and it's like, okay, if we were going to do a study on momentum, it sounds like, oh, we should do that. That would be cool. But you have to kind of define what is it that establishes that we have the momentum. We even and I would like to see, if we do this, if we have done this multiple times, we go on these 6-0 runs, losing the momentum, is that harder or easier to hang on to the momentum, or is it less likely to lose it? But you could raise a lot of questions about really what is it to have the momentum and what is a turnaround in that momentum.
So was the object of the study to find out which type of event leads most commonly to a change in momentum?
I don't think it really was that. I'd have to go back and look at what they stated it to be. I think it was really, hey, there's all this discussion of momentum. We're going to show that we can have a way of identifying this. They did a lot of more sophisticated statistical stuff to make sure that they weren't overfitting in terms of using a training sample. And then, it's all kind of a black box in terms of how the factors enter in into this. They're just trying to predict what's going to happen. Will there be one of these momentum events? And so I think they were pretty okay just saying there are these momentum events that contribute to it. I don't think there was as much emphasis as I would have liked to see on like the change in momentum, which seems to be maybe not as much in basketball, but in other sports, like, oh, we don't want to go into the prevent defense and allow the other team in football, the other team to like start scoring some points, making first downs, because then they're going to catch fire as a team, whatever that even means. So you have to always be wary of that strategically when you're ahead, losing that momentum. Like you'll hear the interviews with the coaches and stuff like that at halftime or whatever in between the quarters, and they make it seem like they're trying to get that back, that momentum. If they've lost it, we gotta find a way to make a stop. We got to find a way to get a turnover, all this kind of thing, and then it'll lead to that. So I thought that I still haven't found a paper that really is a good way of trying to figure out what causes that to happen, because that seems to be the key to, if you want to be more successful as a team, you got to find a way to
change the
switch the momentum in your direction.
It's interesting in soccer. You'll have examples of teams that don't have as much possession. So, you would think it should be around 50-50, right? And then the team that has a lot less possession, you would think they're disadvantaged because they don't have the ball. They're not going to score. But some of these teams are set up to let the other team have possession a lot more, but then to beat them on the counter. So like you've got the ball, but as soon as we get it, we have a scoring opportunity. We're super aggressive. We go all the way downfield and we score. And we took not very much time and we didn't take very many passes to do it. So we don't have possession, but we still made the best use of the moment that presented itself. And that's kind of in soccer, maybe that's the switch in momentum from the heavy possession team, giving up that goal on the quick counter.
I do wonder how much the type of sport affects, the way you think about momentum within it, because I think of something like football where the other team might not have scored and then they score once and there's enough time between scoring that you don't really count that as a movement toward momentum, that it takes a little bit of time for you to catch up and realize you have to update your strategy to play against that team and resist whatever it is they're doing. Because by the time they're already scoring the second time or the third time, you realize you're too late.
Yeah, and every time that you're making decisions on what plays to call and what strategy to take, you really need to look at the game situation. So I talked a little bit about this paper that didn't really factor in momentum, but said, hey, you should really try to go for it more on fourth down, because the success rates that you see out there are high enough that it's a puzzle why teams don't do more of that.
Can you explain that one for non-NFL fans a little bit, Steve?
Yeah. So the way this paper was set up, you have 100-yard the football field. You're trying to go from your end. Maybe you start at the 20, 25, 30-yard line, and then you're trying to go down the cross to the other side of the field. And once you're close enough to what's called the end zone there, you could kick a field goal, which is worth 3 points. Or if you get the ball into the end zone, you get 6 points plus an extra point. Let's say you get 7 points for that. So the biggest payoff to you is making it all the way down the field.
Right.
If you have 4 chances to move 10 yards. That's what's called, the downs. And so if you have used up your first 3 chances and you still haven't made it 10 yards, and then it refreshes if you do make the 10 yards, you can either kick the ball to the other team, and you can kick it pretty, kickers can kick it pretty far. And so you change the position of the ball on the field. So the other team now has to go 70, 80 yards, or you could try it. If you try and don't make it to get across that invisible 10-yard threshold, the other team gets the ball right where it's at.
Right.
And so if you're deep in your own end zone, you're like, I'm not going to try it because the field position would flip dramatically.
And the offense on the other side doesn't have to do that much.
Doesn't have to go as far. So once you're in the middle of the field, it's trickier. Once you get closer to the end, it's like, maybe we should kick a field goal, get 3 points for sure.
Mm-hmm.
The beauty of this Romer paper was that the closer I get to the end zone where I could score 7, do I really want to settle for 3? Because if I turn the ball over there, they're starting deep in their own end. The odds of them scoring next pretty low, right?
Right.
So the field position flipping back and forth is a big part of the momentum. It's kind of like what you're talking about, Nathan, in soccer, where it's like, okay, they have the ball, we're going to get the ball. But unlike soccer, the offensive team has a big say in where you're going to get the ball, because if we go for it on 4th down and don't make it, we're turning the ball over to you right where it's at. Whereas if we kick it, it'll be 40 yards further down the field and you have much further to go. And I just can say that the way the game was played for decades, it was like, just kick it. We'll try again another time. We're not going to
take the risk of turning it over.
Yeah. And
my entire childhood watching football, that's all that, it was very formulaic. Nobody went for it on 4th down.
No, and the reason was there's 2 possibilities. One is you've set them up that on their next possession, they're going to be way better off. And, or that is going to lead to a cascade of, they're going to get a bunch of momentum from that. It's not just that one score, but it's going to change the nature of the game in some way that, it happens in other times. Like if you fumble the ball and the other team recovers it, it leads to the same thing. If you throw the ball and it's intercepted, it's a turnover that leads to something that's like that. So there are other instances in which you could see like what happens when you lose the ball and you haven't kicked it 40 yards downfield on the exchange of possession.
So did the paper find that the practice in the NFL was not optimal given what the statistical outcomes were?
100%. They said, you guys are not going for it nearly often enough. And it was based on obviously the limited number of times when they do go for it. And hey, you're making it like half the time. So let's factor in, you got a 50% chance of doing this. You're close to where you could score 7. So you got a 50% chance of 7, because if you make the first down, you'll probably get a touchdown on this, or you could get 3 for sure. Well, 3.5 is more than 3. So what are you doing? And when they did that study, when the guy did that study, he had to do a couple things. One is he's just looking at like, how many points are you going to score right now? Ignore the momentum changes. And also he looked at it early in games. He had a ton of data, but he looked at it early in games because obviously if you're in certain situations where you're behind, then even Nathan back in the day, they'd go for it because they go like, the only way we can possibly win.
Right. That was the only time they would go for it.
It's sort of like taking your goalie out of the goal at the end of the game when soccer or hockey is like, well, at this point,
going all in.
We're going all in. And so there would be a version of that. And he didn't rely on that because that's kind of a different setting. But I do think that in these kind of situations, again, I'm going to say it's based on observational, not experimental data. So the key thing now, I would say, is that there's one team, the Philadelphia Eagles, that goes for a lot on fourth down, and they have a very strong offensive line and quarterback, and it's like a rugby play that they do to get the first down. And if that's baked into like half the time you make it or 60% of the time you make it, you go, yeah, but we don't have the same personnel. And so I think in all these things,
many other factors are at play.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so it's like, it's
Well-
good to know what the data says, but it's not everything.
It doesn't apply to
Yeah,
everybody equally.
And my impression, and I could be wrong, so correct me if you think I'm wrong, but when we first saw people going for it a lot on fourth down, it was, I think, college teams. And especially, I think there were some Oregon college teams that were very, very, very good, very innovative coaching staff, and were much more likely to go for it on fourth down. But they were also a lot better than some of the teams they were playing against.
Yeah.
And so there, it's not just, I mean, presumably in the NFL, it's a more kind of evenly matched. You're not going to have as big a gap between teams as you might in a randomly selected college game. But you're definitely going to make it more often if you're playing against a team that isn't particularly good.
Right. And I think to get back to the momentum thing, there's that, and there's like the quality of your kicker. And the question is really how much when they're going for it now, because you watch a game now and they go, the analytics will say this is what they should do. They will say that in these key situations. Should they kick or in turn over the ball to the other team way down the field, or should they go for it? And they've got some statisticians that have done this thing, and you're wondering, like, okay, how much are they accounting for these other things, which, like, who the team is, the quality of the other team, and then how much are they building in maybe by giving up this next score, we've juiced up the momentum for the other team, and they're going to come out all fired up, and the game will never be the same again. Because like you hear that all the time, like, well, that's the turning point in the game when they did that and it didn't work and blah, blah, blah. It's like, is that just made up? Or
so is this one of those
that?
things? Is this one of those things where for a long time coaches weren't going for it on the fourth because they were so risk averse, or they were looking at the risk of allowing the other team back into the game or giving them momentum, and they sort of exaggerated that probability in their minds because it was such a bad outcome, and that's why they were not optimizing?
I would definitely say they were behaving in a way that if you were going to model it, you'd say it's pretty risk averse. The question is it because they didn't have the information, or they did have the information, but their loss function was such that they were building something into this, if, rather
they were
than
mini max regretters. They were minimizing their maximum regret, right?
Right. Or were they like, hey, what's going to give me the most expected points? You'll see something occasionally pop up, but because I said if you score a touchdown, you have two options. You can kick for 1 point or try to either run or throw the ball into the end zone from just a few yards away, and you get twice the points, 2 points. Mm-hmm. The conventional wisdom is kick unless there's certain circumstances. And I don't know if anybody's done a study saying, well, how successful are you? Because more than 50% of 2 is bigger than 1. But
so has there been a change then over since the 80s and 90s and the last decades in the practice in the NFL on this?
On the fourth downs, for sure. On the going for it for 2 points versus 1 point, they're still behaving in a way that, to me, could be viewed as risk averse, even though in expected points terms, why not go? Like, we might score multiple touchdowns if we get 2 points. Right. So we get 8 when we score a touchdown, and they only get 7. Right. And even if we make it once and miss it,
yeah, you're still good. You're still coming out at 1.
But I don't know what you think, Nathan, but I think when they look at that, they're going, but if we miss it and we end up losing a game for that reason, I'm going to get fired.
Right. That's what I was going to say is the downside risk which coaches are taking into account is probably you get fired if you make a bunch of sort of mistakes that can be pointed at you, right? As opposed to what's the upside?
Right.
Well,
and that might even be more important than the momentum thing. It's like if they're going to judge me on who they is. I don't know, the fans or the owner or something.
Them.
We know who they are.
Yeah.
But I looked at the data on the going for it on fourth down, and the one thing in the data that I looked at was very superficial data. It didn't have like how much further you need to go. Because sometimes I was saying you have this 10-yard increments. Sometimes you're just like inches away, and you're going like, oh man, we should be able to make it, but it's not guaranteed. So the other factor is when you go for it on fourth down, how far away. But just assuming that distribution of how far you need to go isn't that different. It's like 40 or 50% more likely today than it was 20 years ago to go for it.
I see.
There's been a dramatic change. Did it have to do with this economics paper? Maybe a little bit. Did it have to do with Jonah Hill and Moneyball? Probably. Right, that they're hiring these stat nerds, and they're going, look at this, like, you're going to win more games. You're going to maybe take some heat if you did. There was a game on the other night, Monday Night Football. The Detroit Lions went for it 5 times on fourth down. Nathan, 0 for 5. And their fans are going crazy. Like, what are we doing? And they're like, well, we're playing the numbers. And they lost the game by a touchdown. And a lot of people pointed to me going like, well, that's why, because they gave the other team the ball with what they know is short field. And like, that's how the other team can score more easily. And so they've got a gambler for a coach, I guess, or something.
Yeah, but they didn't see all the ways that they would have fumbled if they hadn't have done that, Like,
yeah, and I think that
we lost on a reality where they still did poorly, but for different reasons.
Yeah, and I think that it's like the kind of the bias that we were talking about at other times, where who remembers this or that? You remember certain things, and I would say that from professional football or maybe coaching in general, the negative things that you do or the things you fail to do, man, that resonates in the kind of internet discussion of things, what fans think, all the talk shows about it. It's like there's a lot of pushback if you do something unconventional and fail at it.
Right.
I think part of the takeaway from this is that the point of understanding momentum is that you want to be able to prepare for a change in expected outcomes. And even if you were able to identify the areas where momentum changes most often happen, it doesn't mean that there is a one uniform strategy that your team could apply in order to stop it. It's more like alertness and awareness of your current circumstances is going to be your best advantage for how to handle it.
Well, right, data analysts would say you would take everything in that particular game, including all the strengths of your players and the strengths of the opposing team, where you are on the field, and all of these other different factors, put them into the model, and it should tell the coach right then whether he should go for it or not.
And they're bringing out the computer.
Right.
Right. It looks like they're doing a massive calculation.
Right. And all I can say, Sush, I agree with that 100%, is that the initial study of this was kind of looking for the immediate consequences of what would happen from that exchange on the field. Not, does everything else in the game that happens, is it different? Is it like that movie Sliding Doors? Have you seen that movie?
Quite a sports reference there, Steve.
But it's like everything else that happened in that day is different because of that one change or some butterfly effect or whatever you want to call it. It's like, well, if that's true, it'd be pretty hard to model. Right. So,
you can't model for everything, but if you could put in 100 different factors
Yes.
into that computer right then, and it tells you, on this one you go for it.
And it's
Right.
kind of ridiculous to say that something that happened way early in the game affects whatever is happening later, except through maybe the score that you got from it. But like, if you believe in this momentum thing, you'd think the game was going one way. And again, we'd have to figure out, how do you measure how the game is going? The game is going one way, something happens, and then the game goes the other way. And absent that thing that happened, would the trend have continued unabated? Or, as Brent saying, there's something else would have happened. That team is better than you, and eventually it's going to show up in the score.
I don't know how much this would apply to professional sports, but I will say you can see this if you're watching, youth soccer, for example. At a certain age, the kids, they give up an early goal, and you can see them kind of slump over and lose confidence, and they're not going to be able to come back from that. And you would think professionals shouldn't be in that situation. These are kids; they're not, paid millions of dollars to play this game, but you can certainly see it at those younger age groups where the momentum, if you had it at all, or if it's kind of neutral, you've lost it entirely, and you can tell from that point that you're not going to get it back.
There is even discussion among pro athletes that if you go in there and you go, you're not playing that well, we're going to bench you and put in your replacement for a while, that you could damage that player psychologically. And then you're going to have to eventually trade them or send them down to the minor leagues, right? I mean, the psychological part of this is kind of important. And even though you'd think the professionals have to, it doesn't matter what happened 2 minutes ago, I've got to have an even keel and attack this next part of the game without letting that affect me one way or the other. Either getting too, like, in talking about individual performance, hot hands and such, like, don't start believing you're going to make everything, but you can't believe that you're going to miss everything either. And
Right.
there are team aspects of that as well. Like, oh, we're going to lose the game now.
So I did just look this up, though. That Chinese Basketball Association study, the 6-0 momentum gap. Actually, if you look at it, one CBA point has an exchange rate of 0.14 NBA points. So it's actually,
for a second, I thought he was being serious.
This was part 2. Join us for part 3, where we'll be talking about sports and where you can earn different amounts of points for different activity, and whether there are optimal strategies players simply aren't exploiting. This episode's been brought to you by Edgeworth Economics, a leader in economic consulting, and with the help of our producers, Kimberly Krewald, Ryan Deal, and Brian McLamara of Brand Ready Media. Thanks for listening, StatPack, and always remember to check your assumptions.